the wrong thing. What's going on, everybody, in Luqman Nation? This is Jacqueline Luqman.
And I'm Abdul Shahid Luqman.
And tonight is Friday, November 9th, coming to you live from Washington, D.C. This is Live in Coffee, Current Events, and Politics in Luqman Nation.
The most dangerous show on social media.
So, we've had a week, have we not, y'all?
Yes, we have.
We've had a week. Goodness gracious. So tonight we're just laid back. We're just kind of chill because we really have had a really busy week with the midterm elections. We did a lot of shows Tuesday night and Wednesday. We got invited to do a lot of different shows. We went up to Baltimore. We did the Real News Network live election coverage Tuesday night. They were really good to us, and we really appreciate the people at the Real News Network. Shout out to them. Then we came back to D.C. the next day, and we did RT in question with Dr. Wilmer Leon. And then we went over to Loud and Clear to do a special post-election show on Sputnik Radio.
And just so we can let our audience know, where you was offered a consistent... No?
Not yet.
Okay. Roll it back. I was just so excited.
I know. I am really excited too, but we can't announce that not just yet. Almost.
Strike it from the record.
Just pretend like you didn't hear that.
No.
Almost though. I think we'll be able to announce that like in a couple of days, like Monday. But we just got to get confirmation of all the stuff first. But we are going to be on Dr. Wilmer Leon's show on Sirius XM tomorrow at noon, from noon to 1 o'clock. Oh my God, I am still tired. And then we're probably going to go to the Peace Congress.
Yeah.
For a little while.
Where we put on our Virginia Defenders hat.
Right. And
shout out to the Virginia Defenders.
Represent not only the Virginia Defenders, but also Black Alliance for Peace.
Black Alliance for Peace.
And we're going to be hanging out with Phil Waledo and our friends in the Virginia Defenders and the Jammu Baraka and our friends in Black Alliance for Peace. And there is some other stuff that we are working on with those organizations and some other people, believe it or not, through our church, that we can't announce that yet either. But we are Luqman Nation. We practice what we preach. When we talk about politics being more than voting on one day or following a politician, politics is what you do every 364 other days of the year outside of election day. And we mean that. So we are working on some things to continue and to expand that work that we've always done. But with some other people who we're really excited about all this other stuff. So look, y'all, tonight's Friday.
Tonight is Friday. So. And
as you can see, our co-host over here,
Brewski
Luqman, who is waiting for some more treats.
Yep.
He's our road dog. He's been he traveled up to Baltimore with us, and he's usually laying on the floor but we have snacks, so he's waiting for some more snacks. So listen, tonight, real laid back, but we really wanted to do a show to talk to you all about some stuff.
Yep, I wanted to say, give everybody a shout out. Lisa, missed you. I'm glad you're back. Chanel, welcome. Esteban, Maurice, my son. And
what's up, Maurice?
Maurice is here, and we like Ronell Green. What's up, Green?
What's up, man?
Yep. So, Gwendolyn.
And over here on YouTube, Shirley Vick. Hello, Shirley.
Oh, Shirley. All right. So what we ask is that you guys share this live stream. Subscribe to us on YouTube if you haven't already. We also asked to follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And invite your friends. We call this the most dangerous show on social media for a reason, because the truth has this day here. And we're not here to sugarcoat anything, but we do interpret our politics through the lenses of Pan-Africanism, social democrat. But we're still getting that together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Social democratic policies, and probably a little bit to the left of that, probably more straight socialist, Pan-Africanist, definitely radical kind of politics we got going on here in Luqman Nation.
But anyway, Chanel Pittman brought up something that's very major in the news that we were going to share with you guys, which is the wildfire that destroyed the town of Paradise, or the city of Paradise.
Paradise City, California?
California, right. And so, you know, those of those people out there who, the climate change deniers, I'm noticing that it's not a lot of them now. You know, they're not as vocal. I think that we don't need the science anymore. I think that we know that there's something amiss in the climate. California has been hit heavy by these wildfires. The reports that I was getting, that I seen on the news all day, is that people were literally running for their lives.
Yeah.
I mean, I think they said like Ellen DeGeneres' home was destroyed.
Right.
I mean, folks are literally, I mean, it's like the apocalypse.
Yeah.
Really. You
Yeah.
know?
I mean, I heard one report, I think it might have been on NPR, where there were firefighters in some town. I can't remember the town, but it was in that area. They were trying to fight the wildfires, but the wind was too strong and it was pushing the fire too fast. They couldn't fight it, so the firefighters had to leave.
Right.
And as the firefighters were leaving, they had to stop people and tell them, turn around, as they were driving, turn around and run. Just get out. And the whole town just destroyed. So I think we are seeing, that Shirley Vick over here on YouTube said 5 people died in their cars trying to get out.
Somebody else
from. That's how fast
thing.
That wildfire was moving. I mean, there are wildfires in some areas of the country every year, but come on, can we be honest? Can we be honest and admit that it's much worse? It's been much worse this year than it's been any other year. And it's gotten exponentially worse every year. And regular people are realizing that. They don't need to be climate scientists to figure that out. So most people have figured out that there's something not right with the atmosphere, with the soil. We saw that with our own little garden this year, where we got pretty fertile soil back there, but tomatoes wouldn't grow, and we weren't the only people who noticed that. Nobody's tomato. I mean, there are a couple of people in our neighborhood who have their own little gardens.
Right.
Nobody's tomatoes grew, but we also noticed there were fewer bees. This year.
Yeah, that was very noticeable.
It was very noticeable. There were fewer bees this year, and the monarch butterflies didn't show up until really late in the season.
Right.
So, I mean, it's these kind of things that regular people are noticing. It was the wettest summer that we have ever had.
Yeah, and I mean, look, the mosquitoes were crazy.
Off the chain.
Right.
Yeah.
But you're right about the rain. And one of the things that that scientists who study climate change have warned about is the fact that when you have this greenhouse effect and moisture accumulates in the atmosphere, more than usual. And so when moisture accumulates in the atmosphere, then it comes down as rain.
Right.
And look, I mean, we've seen a lot of rain.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah. I mean, it's here in Washington D.C. It's raining right now. As a matter of fact, it rained 3 times this week. Yeah.
Seriously hurting the brother's pocket.
Yeah. I mean,
because the rain affects my work.
Yeah.
And so it's seriously hurting the brother's pocket.
Yeah. It's kind of tight. And I think more and more people around the country are going to see the material effects of climate change on their everyday life. He's really wanting some more snacks. Actually, he wants me to move this stuff off the settee so he can lay down on it, but it's mine, so I'm not going to share it. So anyway, that we really just really hope that people in California, the rest of the people, are safe, and we're so sorry about the people who lost their lives and all the people who have lost their homes, and just, oh my God, just be safe.
But we just went through the midterms, right?
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that really bothered me about those who were running, for office. for re-election and stuff. And this is both sides. This is Republican and Democrat. You hardly ever heard any talk about climate change with these politicians.
No, they didn't. And as a matter of fact, in the Florida race, the interesting thing about the Florida Senate race, which I think is going to go to a recount, and we talked about all of that, the fraud and the shenanigans of the Georgia race and the Florida race on Loud and Clear today, so we're not going to go through that right now. We'll give you the link to that show when they provide it. I think I should have it tomorrow. But the interesting thing about the way the Florida race kind of panned out, or is panning out so far for Senate, between Rick Scott, who was a vocal climate denier, and Bill Nelson, was that all of the counties that were affected by the last hurricane in Florida,
that was Michael, I think.
Right. Went for Nelson. All of the counties that were not affected by the hurricane went for Scott. Just about. Almost. I mean, literally it was almost straight down the line. All the wet counties, all the counties that were wet and deluged with water, went for Nelson. All the dry counties that weren't touched by the hurricane went for Scott. And it just speaks to just kind of the undue influence that these politicians have over how people think. It's like people don't think for themselves.
Right.
You know, they just listen to what these politicians say, and if a politician says, you know, climate change isn't real, then unless people actually experience the effects of a catastrophic weather event, then they believe that climate change isn't real. You know, but then it takes people being affected by an unusual catastrophic weather event for them to be convinced that they need to vote for politicians who don't deny climate change, because that actually will affect their life. And
we can also blame the media too.
True.
I mean, you ever look at the weather report on CNN and a lot of even your local stations, and they'll sit there and say, "Oh my God, this is a hurricane 8. This is a Category 18 hurricane."
Right.
You know, they said, "Wow, isn't that something?" But you know, but they never want to talk about how this storm is connected to the changes in the climate.
Right.
They never say that, "Oh, this is the hottest July ever."
ever in the history of July.
Oh, make sure you find someplace cool.
Right.
But they never say that, you know, it's the hottest on record because of climate change.
Right.
You know, so and you don't hear the politicians talking about it, you know. So again, this is you know, we're really as the lady said on one of the podcasts, we really live in dumbfuckistan.
We do. We seriously do. Shirley Vick over here said, "Did you see the video of a car and people taking boxes out, putting it in a truck? Someone asked them, were those ballots?" And it was in Broward County.
Wow.
Broward County is like the hotbed of like dumbfuckistan election at just shenanigans. And it's not because of election fraud. I don't think that what's going on in Broward County is like actual election fraud for one party or the other, because the election commissioners have been appointed by different parties. But, I mean, they've just done, ever since 2000, they've just done really stupid stuff that has just caused all kinds of turmoil. And they're still doing it again. We talk about that on Loud and Clear. But thanks for that, Shirley Vick. If you can give us the link to that video, that'd be great. We'll post it. But it's just a whole bunch of silly shenanigans going on in Florida.
All right. So, the midterms are over.
The midterms are over, thank God.
The Democrats, as everybody know, the Democrats took control of the House, and the Republicans expanded their role in the Senate. You know, so you would think now, you know, the Democrats, you know, waiting for this time to get in. So what's going to happen now? The midterms over. So what's going to happen now? What are the Democrats going to do? You know. So anyway, they've told us what they're going to do. Nancy Pelosi, who I believe needs to go somewhere. Nancy Pelosi needs to retire, take the millions that she got from serving in government, And she needs to go stay with her family.
She needs to go to her summer home somewhere.
The first thing she said is, and this is the reason why the Democrats don't win often when it comes to Republicans. Because Nancy Pelosi said, oh, well, we're going to, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to reach across the aisle and we're going to basically play nice with the Republicans. She said, we're not going to, be drug into the gut. I mean, these are my words, but she's like basically saying, like Michelle Obama, when they go low, we go high.
We go high.
And they want to know why they can't win for shit. You know what I mean? Look, that strategy is not going to work. And now, not only is that, but then the Democrats are talking about, oh, well, we're going to, they're still trying to impeach Trump.
Yes.
They're still trying to impeach Trump. They're still going after these tax returns and all this stuff. Yeah, I think that there ought to be some, they ought to be some investigation with, some of the things like, what Mueller was doing and, the Russian probe and all this other kind of stuff. But, I mean, we didn't, they weren't put in there for that.
No, they were elected. These Democrats were elected to govern. And it's telling, that the very first thing they're trying to do, they're not talking about putting forth policies that advance Medicare for all. They're not even talking about expanding the ACA.
No, well, what they want to do is they're not going to fight for Medicare for all.
Nope.
What they want to do is work on the existing ACA.
They
want a bipartisan thing with
that. Right. That's what they want to do. But the very first thing, I think the telling, aside from Nancy Pelosi saying that what she said was, as soon as the Democrats won the House, what she said was that impeachment is off the table. That's what she said. She said that they're not gonna work to impeach Trump anymore. But that's a lie, because the first thing that some other Democrats said was, now that Maxine Waters, Auntie Maxine, as some people are calling her, she ain't my aunt, that now that she will become the chair of the House Financial Services Committee, people are floating the idea. And I think she even said that the first thing she's going to do is subpoena Trump's tax returns.
Yeah, but you remember the video that was released right before the midterm? She was talking a lot of shit.
She was.
She was. She was sitting up there talking about, well, when we get in there, we're going to do to them what they did to us.
Yes,
and
she did say
we're
that.
going to burn down the house. We're going to slap them on the ass. We're going to shave their heads. They talking about doing all kind of stuff. Okay, one thing I will say, I do agree that they shouldn't go for this impeachment thing. It ain't going to happen.
Yeah.
That's number one.
Yeah.
Number two is, and this one important point I want to bring up, Elijah Cummings. This is the thing that really angered me, just to get to the meat and potatoes of the thing. You hear us say on Luqman Nation all the time about the state of Black America. Mm-hmm. And we're brutally honest about it because the data is brutally honest. And so you got a guy, we were just in Baltimore. And trust me, the size of the rats there, my God, it's something. But we were just in Baltimore. And no one has to tell anybody who's been paying attention how bad Baltimore is.
Right.
Well, this is under Elijah Cummings' watch, right? Mm-hmm. Now, instead of him talking about what he's going to do for the people of Baltimore, he gets up there and say, oh, well, the first thing he's going to do is use his committee to go after Trump. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so here you got Maxine Waters, you got Elijah Cummings. Where's the legislation and the policy to help those that you serve?
Right. And especially when we're talking about Maxine Waters, who is now the ranking member, who will become the chair of the House Committee on Financial Services. This is actually really important. This is a very powerful committee, and let me show you why that is. The House Committee on Financial Services, let me make that bigger so you can read it. Read along with me, folks. The House Committee on Financial Services The House Financial Services Committee, rather, has jurisdiction over issues pertaining to the economy, the banking system, housing, insurance, and securities and exchanges. Additionally, the committee also has jurisdiction over monetary policy, international finance, international monetary organizations, and efforts to combat terrorist financing. The committee oversees the nation's economy through its oversight of the Federal Reserve Board and individual reserve banks, the Treasury, the production and distribution of currency. These jokers decide how much money is printed.
Wow.
And the nation's capital markets. But what is Auntie Maxine going to focus on? Trump's tax returns. Aren't you glad you voted for the Democrats? I'm not saying you shouldn't have voted. I'm not saying you shouldn't have voted for the Democrats to take back the House. Because, yes, a Democratic House does pretty much nullify a lot of what Trump wants to accomplish. He doesn't have a blank check to just pass any legislation he wants to now.
Right.
It's not, a lot of it is not going to pass. But I just have this feeling that a lot of these Democrats are going to go along with a lot of this stuff, especially when it comes to foreign policy and war.
Yes.
There is not a Democrat in that chamber right now. Not right now. There are a couple who are coming in who will provide some pushback. But the Maxine Waters and the Nancy Pelosi's and the Elijah Cummings, they're going to vote for every pro-war, regime change, Department of Defense spending measure that Trump sends to Congress. That none of them are going to push back on that.
Well, that's true, but also talk about the gridlock that we're going to still experience coming this coming year when they get sworn in. Trump already threatened that if they go after him with the subpoenas and investigation and stuff, he's going to create such a gridlock. And trust me, he can back that up. I mean, nothing's going to get passed in the Senate.
Yeah.
Nothing could pertain to Trump is not going to get passed in the Senate. Trump then already did his shenanigans with firing Sessions.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And you notice that he waited until after the midterms.
Right.
He was going to do it anyway, but he waited until after the midterms because he knew it wouldn't play well.
Exactly. Yep.
So, I mean, so now that Trump knows that he's not going to have this carte blanche blank check to do whatever he wants in Congress, that some of his agenda is going to be challenged. Now he's just going straight out Mussolini. I mean, now he's just going straight out Stalin, and he just, I mean, he's banning people, taking the open press pass. They call it a hard press pass, where you don't have to apply for access every day. You have a hard pass that allows you access to the White House every day. He's taking people's a hard press pass away because they're asking him pointed questions. He's telling black journalists that their questions are stupid, and I mean, he's just going straight out thug up in that joint now. Because I mean, now he literally has nothing to lose.
Right.
All of the appearances of his lame attempts at decorum, whatever little bit of decorum he was displaying, he doesn't even have to do it anymore. And he knows he doesn't have to do it anymore. So he's just not going to. And when issues of defense spending and foreign policy, while these people are talking about they're going after his tax returns, we're still broke. Like you said, in Elijah Cummings' state, they're still broke. Those people are still broke. Even if they do subpoena Trump's tax returns, how is that going to help the people of Baltimore?
But it's funny when you was talking about the way that Trump is responding to all of this stuff. But this is what America got. When Trump was running, everybody said, well, he's a businessman, and if anybody's going to turn this economy around, if anybody's going to get this country, it's going to be him because he's successful in business stuff. Well, Trump's a CEO. And one of the things about CEOs is they hate democracy.
That's true.
They hate democracy.
Yes, they do.
And the billionaire class, this is how they act. A CEO of a company, this is how they act.
Yeah, they do.
So I mean, yeah, this is what you want. This is what you're going to get. The thing about war is, and this was one of a side note that we were talking about, is the fact that, folks, here's the announcement from Luqman Nation: get ready for war with Iran.
Yeah. Yeah.
War with Iran is inevitable. The United States have just slapped on the most severe sanctions on Iran that the United States have done to any country.
Yeah.
You know, we know that the Iranians have said that you know, these sanctions are going to force them you know, to do what they said they wasn't going to do. And it's going to force them to find other ways around it and all this stuff. But the thing of it is that these sanctions are supposed to, as they always say, these sanctions are supposed to create regime change.
Right.
It's supposed to make, now this is the thing, they're immoral. And I think sanctions are immoral anyway.
Right.
But these type of sanctions are very immoral because it's penalizing the Iranian people, pardon me, to try to get them so upset that they're going to bring down their own government. The problem with that is that has never happened.
It's never, ever
It has
happened.
never happened. I mean, we can look back in history and see that sanctions have never encouraged people to overthrow their own government.
And this is why when the United States implements regime change, because we're so committed to propping up a leader that is pro-America, pro-Western, pro-capitalism, we have to do it through covert operations through the CIA. That's why because we always do this sanctions BS.
Right.
We always do that first. And then we would destroy the economy of the country. We impoverish an enormous section of the population. And then, yeah, the population is pissed off. But see, people in other countries they don't live in dumb fuckistan like we do. You know, they have state-run media that filters their information too, but they're a lot more honest about how America is an imperialist power that imposes its will on less strong countries militarily.
Mainly countries of people of color.
Right. To push this idea of democracy when everybody else around the world is doing just fine by themselves. So, yeah, people are angry, but they know that when their economy is destroyed and their governments can't do business with other countries anymore, they know that it's because the United States did it. They know that it's because the United States issued sanctions against their country. And that's exactly what's going to happen in Iran. And the Iranian people are not going to be angry at the Iranian government. They're already angry at Donald Trump. See, this is the benefit from watching Al Jazeera. And RT and listening to Sputnik, because those are outlets that go to other countries and talk to people in other countries about how American foreign policy impacts them. So you've already got the people of Iran saying, we hate Donald Trump. They know he's behind this. They know it's not their government. So let's take a look at this article from the New York Times that explains these sanctions. Do you have this up over there?
Let's see if I do. I do have it.
Yes, you have. You take this, because this is your thing.
Okay. All right, so this is what's happening. The United States, like I said, had put these severe, strict sanctions on Iran. The package of severe economic penalties imposed against Iran on Monday by the United States is the most significant part of President Trump's decision last May to abandon the Iranian nuclear agreement of 2015, which he had described as a disaster.
Now, let's remember that according to the international monitoring group that monitors the Iran, this
the IEA.
I cannot remember what they're called right now.
But it's like the International Atomic.
Right. Yeah. International Atomic Energy Commission, I think they're called. The IAEC said that Iran was actually abiding by the deal. There was no indication whatsoever that Iran was not abiding by this deal. they were not in violation of any aspect of the 2015 nuclear deal that President Obama made with them.
And this was also accepted by the European Union.
Right.
You know, which opposed Trump for pulling out of the deal that President Obama made with Iran.
Right. So, Trump him doing this, first of all, him backing out of the Iran deal was just him, sticking his finger in the eye of Obama. It was just because it was something Obama did, and I'm going to undo it because I can, and because, I want to make the black guy look bad.
Well, and another part of it is that you still have in Washington a lot of neocons, hawks, that are itching for a war with Iran. Mm-hmm. So this preceded Obama too. They've always had their eyesight on Iran. So this is not, part of that is Trump wanting to undo anything that Obama had accomplished, mm-hmm. but it's also that he's still, that the neocons and the hawks have his ear.
Right.
And so, and also Netanyahu.
Exactly.
Because the war with Iran greatly benefits Israel.
How does it? How do you mean?
Well, it benefits it. You got two powers mm-hmm. in the Middle East. One is Israel, and the other is Iran. Now, militarily, Iran is probably the strongest military in the Middle East outside of Israel.
Okay.
Saudi Arabia couldn't beat Iran in a war. There's nobody else around there that can deal with Iran. Egypt couldn't deal with Iran. So in order to basically do what they want to do in the Middle East, they have to somehow neutralize Iran. So the first thing they did is that they put up the Saudis, which is I think Chanel Pittman said something about Yemen. Well, Yemen, unfortunately, is the unfortunate recipient of this proxy war that's taking place between the U.S.-backed Saudi military and Iran. If you want to really play it out, it's kind of almost like when the United States backed Saddam Hussein against Iran. So we've been engaged in conflict with Iran for a long time.
Very long time.
This is not nothing new. The United States, Saddam Hussein's army, became much more powerful when the United States did what they have done with Saudi Arabia, mm-hmm. is give them weapons and arms and all this stuff. They gave Saddam Hussein chemical weapons, mm-hmm. which they thought they could come back after 2001 or 9/11 and say, "Oh, we know that he has chemical weapons because we gave it to him."
Right.
Well, but they didn't know that Saddam Hussein had got rid of those weapons.
Right.
He used a lot of them too on the Kurds. And,
yes, he did.
Yeah, so he used a lot of them too. But we have been, since the Iranian Islamic Revolution, been in a state of war with Iran. Maybe not directly,
right,
but indirectly through our proxies. But now it's culminating to a point now where now the United States military wants to the government, the United States government wants to directly attack Iran. Israel's been wanting to do it.
Yeah, true.
George Bush, Israel wanted to bomb Iran after the American invasion of Iraq. George Bush said wouldn't allow Iraqi airspace to be used for the Israeli Air Force because of the negative outcome that would happen if Israel bombed Iran.
Now this was the first George Bush.
No, this is the son.
The second. Oh, the second.
This
George
was after.
Bush. Okay.
This was after the United States.
The invasion of. Okay.
The invasion of Iraq,
mm-hmm.
and this was when Israel wanted to use that opportunity to bomb what they call nuclear research sites in Iran. But
mm-hmm.
the United States government wouldn't allow Iraqi airspace to be used because they knew what would happen if Israeli jets bombed Iran, and they were afraid that would unite the Muslim world. And let's not forget, you got American troops in Iraq.
Right.
So Israel bombs Iran,
mm-hmm.
and that just creates more problem for American troops.
So you got American troops right in the middle of Iran and Israel. And it's interesting that you brought up the Iraq war because George Bush, the son, he invaded Iraq in the first place because he ignored his father's direction not to invade Iraq.
Right.
Because his father said what was that Desert Storm?
I think it was Desert Storm.
Yeah, Desert Storm was under the first Bush. That's how long we've been at war, y'all. I can't even keep the war straight. That's how many of them...
this goes back over 25 years.
Right. I mean, so under the first George Bush, there was Desert Storm, and I remember for some reason I can't forget Norman Schwarzkopf. I don't know why. I think his name is just unusual, and I just can't get it out of my head. But I remember he was the
general,
the commander over all of the U.S. forces of the invasion of Kuwait.
Mm-hmm.
And there was some discussion about whether the United States was going to go farther than Kuwait and invade Iraq. And George Bush, the first George Bush...
Well, it was Schwarzkopf who wanted to.
Right. And
he
President
said, let's go
Bush...
to Baghdad.
Yep, and President Bush was like, nope, because if we take out Saddam Hussein, then we're going to create a bigger problem in the region than we have now.
Yeah, and also George Bush Sr., he told Schwarzkopf that the UN only authorized... forced to get Iraq out of Kuwait,
right?
Not to do anything else.
You
know, and George Bush was right, because what happened was when they left Saddam Hussein in place, they put the no-fly zones up.
Mm-hmm.
He was basically contained,
exactly.
and he was a buffer. He was used as the buffer in that region.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
but buffer between what?
Well, I mean, what I'm saying is that he was used basically. As a buffer to keep the warring factions, the Shiite, the Sunnis, and all. One thing about Saddam Hussein, you didn't have the sectarian violence in Iraq as you did after he left.
Right.
You know, it reminds me of Tito in Yugoslavia with the Serbs and the Bosnians and all that stuff. Well, you know, some places benefit from having a strong man. You know,
yeah.
So you didn't have the Serbs and Bosnians killing each other under Tito.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it was the same way in Iraq. So now that vacuum has been created, it boosted Iranian power and influence in the region. And so this is what we're looking at now. And so now the neocons and the rest of them and all in their wisdom said, we have to take out Iran. Now the thing of it is that all military experts say that Iran is not going to be no cakewalk.
Nope.
You know,
nope.
The United States militarily getting itself engaged with Iran, full-scale out war, is not going to be a cakewalk. Iran is a lot more sophisticated than Iraq was. Iran has a lot going for it as far as technology and all this stuff. You know, so it's not going to be a cakewalk.
Right.
So this is what we're looking at. Now we also have to remember when we look at history that this what caused the Japanese to bomb Pearl Harbor. And what caused one of the reasons the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor was the U.S. oil embargo placed on Japan during World War II.
Wow.
You know, so we're looking at that. This is basically, and it's not regime change. I would go further to say that these sanctions is so Iran can do something so that it would be a justification for war.
Exactly. I mean, let's look at. I love that you brought up the Pearl Harbor thing because I mean this is why we say all the time that history is important, and this is what we do, y'all. We connect this history that people forget, don't know anything about, think is unimportant, to what is going on right now. This history is important. I mean, just the fact that an oil embargo was the reason. It was one of the reasons that Japan bombed Pearl Harbor. Did you know that? Because I didn't know that until he told me that before this show right now, of course. But did you know that? I hope you just learned something. So I hope you understand how important the United States issuing sanctions, levying sanctions against Iran to punish the country or the government for something that it really hasn't done. But in the end, what they're going to do is punish the people of Iran. And let me show you how like you said, Iran is not going to be a pushover. President Hassan Rouhani of Iran, emboldened by widespread criticism.
The way you pronounce that name.
Was it right? Did I get it right this time?
Yeah.
Because you know I'm bad at that. So I'm gonna have to say it again. President Hassan Rouhani of Iran, emboldened by widespread criticism of Trump's sanctions policy. Understand, these sanctions are not just criticized in Iran among the Iranian people who know that they're going to be severely negatively impacted by it. These sanctions are also criticized by the EU.
Oh, yeah. I mean, most of the world, in fact, the majority of the nations around the world do not support the United States.
Yes. So Rouhani says...
Except America's bitch, Britain.
Yeah. So, you made me choke on some snack. So Rouhani says that including from America's closest allies, Germany, well, at this point, we don't have any close allies.
No.
Trump has alienated all the allies. Rouhani responded defiantly on Monday. He said his country would not bend to the language of force, pressure, and threats, because that's what these sanctions are. They're threats.
That's what they are.
It's like the United States is literally saying to Iran, either do what we tell you in regard to developing a nuclear program, or we will starve your people to death.
Well, the United States took it even further than that, where they're telling other countries that even if you do business with them, we're going to punish you.
We're going to punish you too. So Rouhani has already vowed to break the sanctions. While the outcome of the confrontation is unclear, we in Luqman Nation is saying that this outcome is not unclear.
No,
there's going to be military action in Iran.
Yeah.
That is going to be the United States and Iran. And do you think that other than our bitch Britain, do you think that our other allies, what little bit of allies we have left, do you think they're going to join in?
No, I don't. I think that this is where the EU would probably draw the line in the sand with cooperation with the United States. I mean, let's face it. Even during the UN, when Nikki Haley and all them was talking about, all this tough talk and sanctions and stuff, the EU came out and said, well, look, y'all can do what y'all want to do, but the EU created a separate mechanism in order so they can avoid the punishment that the United States would levy against them financially.
Right.
So they had another I forget what you call it, but they had another thing put in place, and so they're doing that because, first of all, they know that these sanctions are unjust. The EU all said that Iran, from their own monitoring, said that Iran is compliant. And so they said, no, we're not going to join you on the sanctions. Military action against Iran, I don't think the EU will go with it. I really don't. I just don't see them doing it. So... No, I think that the United States, you probably have a repeat of Desert, the second one. I forget the name of that. Desert Shield.
Desert Shield.
Where it was United States, Britain, and whoever they can cobble together.
That's, you heard that. You heard that here on Luqman Nation, folks.
And we don't. And let me say this real quick. I hope that we don't sound glib saying this. War is a horrible thing. And so we're not trying to make light of the situation. But this is on us, folks.
Right.
What I'm saying is that this is on us. And we have to really create, and we're starting to do it, but we really have to organize a robust anti-war movement in this country.
We really do. I mean, people... we part of the problem is that we have a generation of people who have grown up with nothing but war. Right? I mean, a lot of younger people who are involved in politics now because of Bernie Sanders, they were born into America at war.
Right.
So they don't understand, they've never known this society not being at war. And we this generation needs to do more. Our generation needs to do more to fight for that, for not just this generation after us, but our grandkids. But you guys have to understand how important this is to you, how this impacts you, and we're doing better with conveying that message. How the military-industrial complex starves everything else in this country, but we got to do more than share stuff online. You got to get connected to an anti-war, pro-peace organization where you live, and you got to go to meetings, and you got to you got to do this stuff. You got to protest.
And again, if you can't do it, I know that a lot of us are disabled. A lot of us are incapacitated some way of physically joining. Then damn it, write a check.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Support these organizations, because trust me, we have to rein this in. Sooner or later, these people are going to push us to the point where, and I don't want to, be an alarmist, but they're going to push us to a point where we are in this stage in time in our history, where we are really looking at extinction level war.
Yeah. Yes.
I mean,
yes.
and let me make this clear, because I don't think that we can spend too much time on this. Trump has unilaterally pulled us out of the INF treaty. And so Putin gave a press conference on it. And, one of the things that Putin said was, he said, well, if the United States does that, then we have to retaliate. And then retaliating means they're going to develop, which they already started, a new generation of nuclear weapons, like the United States. And China, which hasn't signed any agreement with the United States or Russia as far as nuclear weapons go, they weighed in and basically sided with Russia, because the United States is playing a dangerous game with China. I had posted something on my page where the Chinese president had instructed his generals to prepare for war with the United States. Now, why is that? The United States is in the process of giving Taiwan millions of dollars of weaponry. Of course, the Chinese don't like that. America has also put pressure on the Chinese as far as the South China Sea go. So you have a large American naval presence there.
Right. Always.
Which is pissing the Chinese off. And then they're going around and they're talking about giving weapons to Taiwan. So the Chinese president said, and then let's not forget that China's in a trade war with the United States.
Right.
So when all of these things come together, sooner or later, nations are going to respond. They're going to react. And there's one thing about Iran, going to war with Iran. There's another thing going to war with a nuclear power like China.
Right.
Right. So China and Russia had just performed the largest military maneuvers that they did in about maybe 30 years. Right.
The largest joint military maneuvers.
Now, this corresponds with the NATO just had their largest military exercise that they had in a couple of decades. So we have to pay attention that we are on the precipice of extinction level of an extinction level event if these things aren't reined in. Right.
So over here on YouTube, 701, what's going on, said that they ran out of. He said, first, if they haven't figured out Yemen yet, how long a war with Iran would take. They ran out of ammunition after 2 years with Yemen. An Iran war will take plenty. I just don't see it happening due to the power Iran been growing since 1988. Well, what did Trump say in response to Putin's comments about Russia building a new generation of nuclear weapons?
Well, basically we're getting into another arms race. Well, we're already in another arms race with Russia and China. And Trump said flippantly that we'll spend and spend and spend until the Russians come to their knees. He said we're richer than them. His term was, we got more money than them. And so we'll spend and spend until the Russians fall to their knees. Now, as a citizenry, we should be really offended by that statement. Because what you're saying is you're willing to spend all of this money with no limits at whatsoever. And I thought the Republicans were supposed to be fiscally conservative.
Right.
But you're willing to spend all this money on weaponry and nuclear weapons and all this stuff until Russia submits. But at the same time, you're the same government that's telling us that you can't afford universal health care.
Right.
That you can't afford, that we can't afford building our roads and infrastructure.
Right. Quality housing.
We can't afford to forgive the student loans of these college kids.
Right. Right. So kids don't graduate from college with a degree, but 6 figures in debt that they're going to take 10, 20 years to pay off.
Right. Exactly.
So
we can't afford to do any of that. But yet you're going to publicly state, and this shows you the disdain they have for the citizenry. This shows you the contempt that they have for us, because I mean to say that and not suffer and not think that you're going to have any repercussions for saying that. So you just basically said, yeah, we got money to spend for this, but but there's never no money for us.
Right. And I mean the small and honestly very old and very white, because let's be honest about the anti-war community. These folks are holdovers from the anti-war movement from Vietnam.
Yeah.
Honestly, I gotta be honest. The anti-war meetings and protests that we go to,
yeah.
Mostly white, mostly old. When we did the Women's March on the Pentagon, remember when we were on the protest route, and there was a guy being pushed in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
Every protest we have been to since we've been married, just about. I'm telling you, that man has been there. And that was the first time we've been to, I can't even tell you how many protests we've been to. But every protest we've been to that has focused on anti-war, anti-imperialism, getting the United States out of this country or that country, it's always been a bunch of older white people.
Right.
Black Alliance for Peace is changing that. And that's why we're aligned with Black Alliance for Peace and Ajamu Baraka, because war is a black issue too. It's a black issue, and it's a poor people's issue. Because who do you think they send into combat? The people who decide to wage war don't send their kids into combat. And they send our kids into combat.
And our kids are fighting other poor kids from other countries.
Exactly. It's always the poor marginalized people fighting the rich man's war. So we have to change, not just change the direction of the politics in our country in regard to the military-industrial complex and militarism and imperialism, but we also have to change the demographics of the anti-war movement in general. That's why y'all need to get involved. That's why, just because you go, that these anti-war organizations and protests, it's going to be a bunch of old white people. Go there and challenge them on their messed up rhetoric, because we have to do that when we go to these events, and we have people in the anti-war movement telling us that we have to declare that we're going to be nonviolent. Yeah. We have to look. Let's explain to you why that's problematic. Anybody telling marginalized people that we have to pledge an oath, that's what it was.
That's what it was.
That's what it was.
Oath, yeah.
Pledge an oath that we are going to adhere to the principles, that we're going to be nonviolent, that we're going to be pacifists. I'm all for being nonviolent. But when it comes to defending myself, nothing is off the table. There is no way that anybody can tell marginalized people that we do not have the right to self-determination and to defend ourselves against violence. Now, the problem with these usually very older, usually very white organizations,
very
suburban organizations pushing this non-violent business, is that they don't define what non-violence is. Or a better explanation for that is they don't define what violence is, right? See, violence is what the military-industrial complex is doing. That's violence. Violence is what our government is doing with our money, giving it all to the military-industrial complex to go kill people in other countries and using our kids to do it, but claim they have no money for services for our kids and our families. That's violence.
And not just giving all the money to the military-industrial complex, but using government to enrich themselves with major tax breaks.
Exactly.
Now, that's violent because then that pushes more pressure on the rest of us.
Exactly. Exactly. So all that does is create this hyper competitive, desperate, dog eat dog, every man for himself kind of society that is violent. So don't tell me that me fighting against those violent forces that are infringing upon my desire for a peaceful and prosperous life, that I can't fight that I can't defend myself with force against that. I have every right to, and so do you. And that's just, the political violence.
Right.
We're not even talking about the actual physical violence that we have to face sometimes from the state and from citizens who are racists and fascists. Or
racists and fascists, or citizens where we live at who just don't have any hope or feel that there's no hope, and so they're striking out, and usually they're striking out against those who live around them.
Exactly.
So violence is very much a part of American life, and it starts from the top.
Right. I mean, so there's violence. There are those things that are violence. And then there's self-defense. And the problem with this anti-war movement that's a holdover from these, old white folks from the 60s, is that they see all violence as the same. And for marginalized people, all violence has never been the same. There's violence that's committed against us in our lives, and then it's us defending ourselves against that violence. So we participate in these forms.
Right. And but I was just going to add that, with all of their shortcomings, at least they're there.
Exactly. At least they're still fighting. At least most of them are kind of willing to engage in this discussion as we are fighting this larger issue. Yes, the rest of y'all, like Shirley said over here on YouTube, we need to get it like it was in the 60s. Y'all need to be not afraid to get out in the streets. And like we always say, everybody can't get arrested. We understand that. But y'all really need to get out in the streets in your cities and really fight this war machine.
But see, one of the things that we have to overcome as a citizenry, we have to overcome fear of losing what we think we have.
Yeah.
This is going to take this is going to take sacrifice. It's going to take us risking maybe our employment. It may take it may take us risking getting a criminal record, going to jail or whatever. But this is why why organizations exist. No one is asking Sally Dunbar to do it on our own.
Right.
Nobody's talking about Joe Walsh to go do it on his own, but through organization. And organization is where not only can you strategize, but organization is where your protection will come from.
Exactly.
Where your resources will come from.
Where your support comes from.
Right, where your support comes from. So that's the reason why we have to. And there's an organization in D.C. called Empower D.C. And their slogan is, join an organization. Get organized. Because this is what we have to do. It's the true saying. I mean, you ball your fists up. That's a lot harder than, someone
just poking somebody in the eye with your finger. Yeah.
But folks, we can't stress this enough. The Democrats and the Republicans, they fight over a lot of things. But what they always are in agreement in is when it comes to war.
All the time.
All the time.
All the time.
They can always get some bipartisan agreement on that, But the stakes are so much higher now.
Yeah.
We're talking about weapons that can destroy the planet. We're talking about weapons that would set the clock back to 1 million BC. And we can't afford, as a species, to not take this seriously when you have a fool like that in the White House, and who doesn't understand diplomacy, who's surrounded by a bunch of white nationalists, and who don't respect anybody else. And what happens is like the rest of the world is not going to stand for it. And now and the fact that we have Russia and China who militarily can take it to us, especially if they combine, if they bring themselves together. This is not World War II where the oceans will save us. No. This won't. World War III will not be that war. We can get it now. And so this is no time for us to just bury our heads in the sand, go to our 9 to 5, and come home and act like that this doesn't concern us.
Right. It concerns all of us. It affects all of us. And because we have believed that it's somebody else's problem, that it affects other people, we've let it go on for way longer than we should have. And now it's like you said, we're on the precipice.
We are.
We're on the precipice for climate change. I mean, if we don't do something different and drastic, climate change is going to kill us. I mean, if we don't do something drastic, war is going to kill us.
Yeah, and the thing of it is that we have to remember, because Luqman Nation is always talking about history. Well, the Earth has already experienced 7 mass extinctions already. 7.
Yeah, so the Earth is like, I'll be fine if y'all go.
7 mass extinctions, and we're on the precipice for another mass extinction. They already said that with climate change, we only got a window of maybe 20 years before it's irreversible. Right. So yeah, folks, we got our job to put out, and we need to put fire underneath those people in D.C. who call themselves our elected representatives. We had said on Luqman Nation the last time we spoke with you guys is that now, after the midterms, now is when we really turn up the burner. Yes. All of us have Congress people. All of us have these elected representatives. We need to be in their ass
all the time. That there was this big deal about all these folks, and social media is a good thing, but I also hate social media because you come in contact with that many more stupid people. And I'm sorry.
They have a bullhorn like
and
everybody else, right?
They have the same bullhorn, the same platform that you and I have, right? So they can espouse some really ridiculous, stupid things, and they got hundreds, tens of thousands of followers on Twitter and Instagram, just gobbling up their stupidity, thinking that it makes sense. And you're like, damn it, no wonder we live in dumb fuckistan. People believe in these. I mean, people were sharing all these memes about, especially targeted at black people. Black people, you had better vote. If you don't vote, of course it came from Oprah. And remember President Obama with the tell Pookie and Ray them to go vote. They do this every freaking election with black people. They do it every damned election. They tell us,
black people, we need you now.
This is the most important election of our lifetime. Do you know how many times I've heard that in my lifetime? Yeah. I've heard that at least 4 times in my lifetime. And I'm just right off the top of my head. That's what I mean, but they do this every time. They trot out this ridiculous crap about, your ancestors, our ancestors fought and died for our right to vote. So you're dishonoring your ancestors if you don't vote. Look, our ancestors fought and died for a hell of a lot more than our right to vote. And let's be clear on what a right is. Like, if I make you do something, then you don't have any rights to decide that you can't do it. You don't have a choice to decide that you cannot do this thing. If I force you to do it, you have no rights in the matter. You have no say. And if I tell you that you cannot do it, if I keep you from doing it, then you don't have any say in the matter in whether you want to do it or not. But having a right literally means I can decide what I want to do about this particular thing. That is what a right is. I can decide to do this thing or not. The choice is up to me. I get to choose. That's what a right is. But that is not the only thing our ancestors fought and died for. Our ancestors also fought and died for freedom and liberation. They also fought for equality in this society. They also fought to be recognized, not just called citizens, but to be recognized and treated as citizens of this United States of America. Really, it's the Incorporated States of America. But anyway, our ancestors fought and died for us to be fully citizens, fully equal, and to be recognized and treated as such. They didn't just die for the right to vote. And just because there are some folks among us who feel like this system has failed us miserably, that they choose not to vote, I mean, I'm not mad at them for feeling that way, because I understand why they feel that way. I understand. But my response to black people who don't vote, when they tell me that, look, I don't vote because, you know, what difference does it make? My life doesn't change. My response is to talk to them about how voting can change some things.
Right.
But in how they need to be engaged in the process every other day outside of election day. I'm not going to stand there and waste my time with somebody who has already, through their own life experiences, come to realize that this system just fucks black people over all the time. And it doesn't matter which party is in power, unless you get a politician in office who really is about liberation and equality for black people, they're just going to fuck black people over.
That's true.
That just for the check, they're just going to do it.
But I also wanted to say that, you know, one of the things that's never spoken of by the Oprahs and them when they talk about dishonoring ancestors and what our ancestors fought and died for. Well, how about our ancestors fought and died for a break from racism?
How about that? How about our ancestors fought and died for the end to white supremacy and racism?
And the fact that, you know, they didn't want that for us to continue to do through that. So I think that, and I think that if you want to talk about what they fought and died for, how about just to catch a break?
Yeah.
You know, from white supremacy and all of the stuff that comes with that.
But see, we can't catch a break from white supremacy and racism when we have our favorite politicians saying stupid shit like this. Bernie Sanders said people who refuse to vote for black candidates aren't racist. And people are furious. Well, yeah, we are, because that's stupid. Bernie Sanders said, I think you know there are a lot of white folks out there who are not necessarily racist who felt uncomfortable for the first time in their lives about whether or not they wanted to vote for an African American. I think next time around, by the way, it will be a lot easier for them to do that. And he's talking about the race, the gubernatorial race in Florida.
Right.
Between
Gillum and Santos.
Blatant, obvious racist. I spoke at a conference that was organized by white supremacists and Holocaust deniers, Ron DeSantis. And I took racist money. And when everybody told me they were racist, I kept the money for my campaign. DeSantis. Ron, I said don't monkey this election up a few weeks before the election, and then tried to claim that I wasn't making a racist statement, DeSantis. So Bernie Sanders is talking about the race between obvious, blatant racist Ron DeSantis. I think that's his first name, Ron, whatever it is. DeSantis, and Andrew Gillum, who is the current mayor of Tallahassee, African-American man, and could be I don't know if there's going to be a recount yet, but they're still counting ballots, and he is in a race to be the next governor of Florida. Bernie Sanders says this stupid shit. And I'm just going to call it stupid shit, because it's stupid.
Yep.
It's stupid. And okay, later on, after some pushback, and it really ticks me off. Bernie Sanders is 70-something doggone years old. Here's a man who protested during the civil rights movement, protested on behalf of black people. How in the world do you not know?
I think he got chained.
Chained himself to a black woman to protest, and you don't think that white people who don't want to vote for black people are racist? So then after he gets pushback from people about his stupid comments, he makes this other statement that's just, more mealy mouth. I wasn't really trying to say that people weren't racist, but, Gillum is a great guy and I stand with him. And yes, these particular politicians, Brian Kemp and Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis, ran racist campaigns. No, they didn't run racist campaigns. They are racists. Period. And the people who voted for them are racists. Let me tell you why we unequivocally caught him missing his mouth with a snap. Let me tell you why we unequivocally say that people who voted for these people are racist. There's no argument about it anymore. And there needs not to be any argument about it anymore. And I know that people who are strong supporters of Bernie Sanders don't like for people to talk bad about Bernie. I don't give a damn. I don't care. Because, see, this is our lives. Our lives depend on you white people getting this right. And the more white people, the more well-meaning white people don't get this right, the more fucked over we get by racist white people that well-meaning white people don't like calling racist. If a man says, I am uncomfortable voting for a woman, don't we call him a sexist?
Or a misogynist.
A misogynist, yeah, because sex is misogynist. If people say, I am uncomfortable voting for a gay person, don't we call them homophobic?
Yep. Yeah.
If someone says, I am uncomfortable voting for a Muslim, what do we call them?
Islamophobic.
So explain to me how it is that white people who are uncomfortable voting for black people aren't fucking racist.
And we're not talking about white people who say, well, I just don't agree with their policies.
Right.
Or I don't agree with higher taxes or whatever. But to come out plainly and state, as I've heard some people say, on C-SPAN and others, I'm just not voting for this black person.
Yep, I don't want to vote for a black.
Yeah, I mean, we had Obama. They got their shot,
and that's enough Negro for me.
But this is what I think with Sanders. Sanders exposed his punkism during the convention. Now, here's a guy. If he really wanted a revolution, then he should have took that all the way down. I mean, a revolution isn't where you say, okay, now, I lost, but I'm going to throw my support behind Hillary Clinton because of some kind of false unity to stop Trump. Mm-hmm. No, that was bullshit, because if you was really about a revolution, when you was on the campaign trail, first of all, when he was on the campaign trail, and when he seen the momentum that he was having, the real revolutionary would be like, fuck the Democratic Party, fuck Hillary and everything else. We're gonna do this thing, But everybody was like, well, the stakes are so high because if you do that, then that's a sure win for Trump. Okay, whatever. But now you see Bernie the politician. You saw Bernie the politician then. You seeing Bernie the politician now. So now all of a sudden it's like, just because they don't want to vote for blacks doesn't mean that they're racist. But I guarantee you, if I didn't vote for a Jew because I said I ain't voting for a Jew, oh, well, you anti-Semitic.
Yeah, anti-Semitic. I forgot that one. Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, so if I sat up there and got all Mel Gibson on him and said, Mel Gibson. Look, I'm not, I'm uncomfortable voting for a Jew. You know what I mean? Uh-huh. Oh, well, that's anti-Semitism. Mm-hmm. So, and I'm sure he would say that, being a Jew.
Right.
So, so now you say, well, somebody who's uncomfortable. And this is the thing that gets me with being uncomfortable, white folks being uncomfortable with voting for black candidates stuff. Black people have been in this country longer than a lot of you motherfuckers. And I mean, you know, this is what kills me.
Come on, man.
It really bothers me with this other shit. You know, this thing, like we just got off the boat in the 60s. And and America was, lily white, and here we come, and and you got to get used to us, like that. What was that show that came on when the aliens came down and they tried to assimilate
Alien Nation?
Yeah,
I love that show too.
Well, like we Alien Nation, and all of a sudden now, you gotta find a way on how to accept our presence.
We don't know what to do with the Negroes.
Right. So let me tell you something. The first Africans got here, according to some records. And please, I don't feel like arguing the conscious shit right now about black people been here millions of years and shit. But my thing is that 1619 was the first Africans that came in Jamestown. 1619. A lot of you people of European descent, the bulk of y'all ancestors ain't come here until the damn late 1900s. I mean, 19th century.
Right.
You know what I mean? A lot of y'all came. A lot of your parents and grandparents stuff came in that great European wave of the late 19th century into the 20th century. Black people been here since 1619, and you got a nerve to sit up here and talk about
we're the other.
Yeah, you uncomfortable for voting for somebody because I'm not comfortable with voting for a black man. More American than many of y'all. You know what I mean? So so that's the problem I have with this trying to still make us the other.
That's a great point. I think that's a great point, and I didn't even think about that. The whole idea that you got people in this country, especially. And we were having such a good time talking. We didn't even keep track of the time. We didn't even care.
Well,
but,
yeah.
But especially in light of, we love it when people share content that they find interesting with us. Because we got an email in our inbox, a message in our inbox from somebody in Europe who wanted to connect their friends to our page, and she. Marilyn Conway, thank you, Marilyn, for that podcast. I can't remember the guy's name, but it's on our page. It's an Irish guy who is interviewing Spike Lee. And this podcast and this interview is so great because what you just talked about black people being here longer than a lot of white people, especially in the South, because a lot of those white people in the South came from Ireland. They were a part of this huge migration of Irish who were escaping oppression, British colonization and oppression in Ireland, and they settled in the South. And that's why a lot of Southern white people have Scottish-Irish ancestry. And that's
like the McCoys and
the McCoys, and that's why some of those Southern names are Irish in origin. And that's where the term hillbilly comes from too, because a lot of those people were descendants of Irish and Scottish people. There was an Irish king, William something or other, and they all named their kids William.
Yeah, it was like William the Arse.
Yeah, it was not William the Arse. But they all named their kids, I think it was William the Bruce, maybe, I think.
No, that was Scott.
That was Scottish. Yeah. Okay, but it was one of those Williams who was Irish. Robert the Bruce, that's what it was. But it was one of those kings who was Irish that they all idolized, who was fighting for freedom from the British for the Irish people. And they all named their kids after him. So they all named their kids William. So everybody's nickname was Billy. And they all lived in the hills. So that's where the term hillbilly came from.
There you go.
So there's this connection between Irish immigrants and Southern white people. And if you wonder how these immigrants of Irish people who were discriminated against when they came here by white people who were already here, who were also
they were
European. They were the WASPs.
Yeah.
But they were the dregs of British and European society when they came here too. But they were here longer, so they discriminated against the new immigrants, the Irish. So then you wonder, how did this new group of immigrants not align with the oppressed black people? Because the Irish were indentured servants, a lot of them. They were not slaves. Stop spreading that lie. Irish people.
I mean, you can't have everything.
Yeah,
man.
I mean, damn it, y'all.
Damn.
Irish.
Hip-hop took all this stuff. Now you want to take the slave past too.
Excuse me. If you listen to this podcast, this Irish guy talks about how Irish people actually can't stand how racist Irish Americans are, and how they perpetuate this lie that the Irish were slaves. People in actual Ireland are telling Irish Americans, you dumbasses, you were never slaves. You were indentured servants. You could eventually work out of your contract of indentured servitude. Your children were not born into indentured servitude because you were indentured servants.
You weren't considered chattel.
You weren't chattel. You were not slaves. And I didn't even know that chasm, that schism existed between Irish people and Irish Americans, but it does. And I would never have known that had this woman not shared this podcast from this Irish guy with me.
Well, but see, the thing of it is that we understand that race is invented. So whiteness was bestowed upon people. I mean, we said this on our show a couple of times. Brick by Brick used it too, where the Italians were considered people of color,
right?
Until they decided to bestow upon them whiteness. And it's something in America that once certain Europeans are bestowed with whiteness, then they act it.
They do.
And so that's the thing. Hispanics now, we don't even have to go that far back. Now whiteness is being bestowed upon certain groups of Latinos now. So and they start acting it. So that's an interesting point that you make, because we were talking about this before the show, that if a lot of African Americans who have white ancestry actually look up their white ancestry, you will find a lot of it from Ireland. Because, as you said, the Wasps didn't want the Irish around, and so black people have always been welcoming.
We've always been really welcoming of everyone.
We've always been welcoming, and so a lot of people who were outcasts mainly found the home within the African American community. This is also true with interracial marriage. If you notice, especially back in the day, a lot of interracial couples lived amongst black people.
Yeah, because we won't go kill nobody because they were interracial.
Yeah,
we didn't believe in this miscegenation bullshit. We were just like, oh, he loves you? All right.
Right. So, I mean, I remember as a kid growing up and having a couple of interracial couples in my church. I have white relatives, through marriage, myself. So, I mean, and they hang with us. So, so we've always been a welcoming community, for the most part. But then, a lot of times what is played is the divide and conquer. And those who are in power, they see this. And one of the things that has always been consistent in this country, that any group of people who get too close to black folks, then there's always this attempt to somehow divide them or to drive a wedge.
Right.
And we've seen this a couple of times played out in this history. One we were talking about. Somebody mentioned about Bacon's Rebellion. Yep. Where poor whites and poor blacks got together against the aristocratic planters of the South, and so what did the rich planters, white planters, do? They bestowed whiteness upon the poor whites, right? And said that, well, you have more in common with us than with them. And what they did was basically gave them jobs. Yep. And
I think they gave them the right to the opportunity to own land.
Yeah, to own land
and to vote.
And to vote, which before was only reserved for land only white men. And so they said, oh yeah, you can vote. Oh yeah, you can be a cop too. You can help us keep them Negroes in line. Right. So it was a few concessions that was given to them. And that was enough for a lot of them, and they just like, well, okay, they're not mad anymore. Right. And so, then we once became, then now they seen us as the enemy. So, or they seen us as a people that have to be put in their place because God forbid we get what they got, you know.
Right.
So there's always been this attempt by the ruling class to drive a wedge between anyone who even look like they're aligning themselves or allying themselves with us. This includes even other black people. We said this on Luqman Nation a couple of times, that even African immigrants and Caribbean immigrants that would come here in the Jim Crow South were treated differently than native black Americans. You know, it was the same way in apartheid South Africa. So that we didn't, if you were a black American and you went to South Africa under apartheid, you were given honorary white status. So, so it was always this thing of keeping oppressed people from joining up with each other,
Right.
So.
And I mean, the thing, it's amazing how all of that history, it has the same strain that runs through it, that at some point, all groups of oppressed people all groups of non-black oppressed people realized, hey, we actually have a lot in common with y'all. Let's work together. And then the ruling class, and let's be honest about who the ruling class is. We're talking about white men. I mean, can we not be ambiguous with this ruling class stuff? Because people say that all the time.
It's rich white men.
It's rich white men.
Yeah, mainly rich old white men.
Yeah, exactly. That's who the ruling class is. It's not some nebulous, ambiguous, cloud of shadowy figures that we don't know who they are.
Like the market.
Right.
Yeah.
The ruling class has always been and is rich white men.
And
always.
It continues to today.
It continues to today. The same was true of Irish immigrants and their relationship to enslaved Africans and the enslaved descendants of Africans, even to the point that in Ireland, and I did not know that until I listened to this podcast today, there is a well-known Irish abolitionist who became good friends with Frederick Douglass and sponsored Frederick Douglass to visit Ireland. Frederick Douglass hung out with this guy in Ireland. I'm not going to tell you who it is. You're going to have to go listen to the podcast and read the article that we put up. But this man was very influential in the fight of the Irish against British colonialism, because Britain has been colonizing Ireland for 800 years. 800 years. So the Irish were always fighting against colonialism. So this guy was very a bigwig in the fight against the British during that time, became friends with Frederick Douglass, invites Frederick Douglass over to Ireland. They do a bunch of speeches. He's inspired by Frederick Douglass. He writes a bunch of articles and treatises that are actually published in the United States. And he's trying to appeal to Irish immigrants to America. And he's trying to get them to unite with enslaved black people. And when he finds out that Irish immigrants in the South are actually not opposing slavery, meaning they're supporting slavery and they're a part of the Confederacy and they're willing to go to war for the Confederacy, he is angry. He is so angry that he writes this missive and he sends it to America, and it gets published in all of the Irish immigrant communities. And he basically tells the Irish people, how did your hearts become so hardened that you would let your hearts be turned against your fellow oppressed brothers and sisters who are enslaved? If you will not fight for these people, you need to stop calling yourselves Irish.
Wow.
Never knew that. And this guy is very, he is an icon in the history of the struggle against British colonialism. Not going to tell you who he is.
Well, we give the link, and that will be your homework.
That's your homework,
right?
I mean, but it's like, so if people around the world understand what racism is, how in the world are we in this country giving our elected officials a pass when they won't call it what it is. Why do we do that? How do you figure we are going to achieve this respite from racism that our ancestors actually fought and died for if we don't hold our elected officials and everybody else that we deal with in public life?
But hasn't that been America's biggest impediment for to become that more perfect union? Is the fact that we have really never acknowledged deeply the wrongs of slavery and the harms that was done through slavery and things like that. So, I mean, the fact that we, that we put it in these things, even black people too, it's like where we put in these things like, well, it's not really racism, it's not really this, it's not really that. And black people buying into this thing that if you call something racism, you're playing the victim and all this stuff. But, but we have never really had that serious conversation in this country. We've never really dealt with it like that. So it really is disappointing to me that Bernie Sanders is, and people like Ralph Nader, who we talked about before, is really living up to or embodying that white liberal that Martin Luther King spoke about. This old mealy mouth, this whole passivity when it comes to dealing with these issues. We say time and time again to white people, man, we know what racism looks like. I mean, I don't need you to sit up here and confirm for me what is racist or not. My experience in this country, some people have certain radars. Well, my discrimination and racist radar is upgraded every day in America. You know what I mean? So, when you live a certain experience in this country, then, you don't need someone else who don't live that experience to tell you that whether what you feel is legitimate or not.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it really, Bernie Sanders really disappointed me in that way, as so many others. But, we're wrapping up this show now. It's 11:30.
I know. Woo, and time flies when you're having fun.
What we got coming up?
So, tomorrow, which is Saturday, check us out. And check Dr. Wilmer Leon's show out on Sirius Radio. I think it's called The Critical Hour on Sirius Radio. No, it's not. It's called something else.
No, it's something else.
It's something else. We'll give you the Sputnik show. We'll give you the information to Dr. Wilmer Leon's show on Sirius XM Radio, or just Google it. Come on now, you're on the internet. Good grief. We'll be live on that show on Dr. Wilmer Leon's show tomorrow from noon to 1 o'clock. I think we're going to attend a little bit of the Peace Congress tomorrow. We're going to be hanging out, like I said, with our friends at the Virginia Defenders and John Mubaraka and our other friends at Black Alliance for Peace. Every Friday, we are still going to be doing our weekly segment on Sputnik Radio on Loud and Clear. However, there is an announcement coming up about that segment. Just can't tell you what it is yet, but it is really, really exciting. Really excited about that.
So, so as we end this podcast, I always like to say that we appreciate you guys a lot.
Yes, we do.
If you like what you see, like what you hear, if you like what the Luqmans are doing, please support us. Patreon. Well, you better with all that stuff. I can't even say it.
That's because he wants to go to bed now. He's like, we've been talking too long. I want to watch some TV. We need to do that. Patreon, GoFundMe. And you can find us on both platforms under Luqman Nation. Search under Luqman Nation. LuqmanNation.
And one more thing, too. Those of you who have been with us for a while knew that we was working on this documentary, Baltimore After the Fire. That GoFundMe page is still up. We are not abandoning that project. We're still doing that project, but hey, making a film costs money. And I know it's rough for a lot of us. That's why we keep our jobs. But we do appreciate you guys who are supporting us through the Patreon thing. Subscribe to us on Twitter. Tell your friends about us. Follow us on Instagram and all the other social media platforms.
Yep.
And what else?
I think that's it.
Is that it?
I think so.
Okay.
Do you have anything else?
Yeah. What is Pitbulls and Politics? Definitely tomorrow. Tomorrow
you
night.
Sure?
I'm sure.
You
tomorrow
positive?
Night. See.
Because
no. And I'm sorry, man, for making these announcements, but like with Brick by Brick and stuff, we've really been trying to revamp these shows and decide what we want to include, what we don't want to include. And so with Pitbulls and Politics, I was doing the same thing. And not to mention, we're middle aged, so it's like that little energy of youth thing.
We need our bedtime.
Yeah,
man.
but again, we try to bring you the best content. And so hit us up if you want to message us. You can do that on Facebook, and we'll try to get back to you as quickly as you can. But you guys out there in Luqman Nation, we really appreciate you, and we thank you for all the support that you continue to give us.
As always, y'all, be really, really good to each other. Peace.
I believe the children are our future.
Sing it!
Teach them where